All right, guys. Welcome back. I know it's been a couple weeks since we've had a video. Of course, we didn't have Sunday school last week, and the week before that, I was unable to get a video to you. But we started Unit 18 a couple weeks ago and went over the story of Esther. And today we're going to jump to the book of Nehemiah um, and talk about his story a little bit. Of course, we know Nehemiah is famous for rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. So the Jerusalem had been destroyed, and the people had been in captivity for many years. And Nehemiah is the one that we know that goes back and leads the people to build the wall back up again. And so, just excuse me, your curriculum this week talks about basically kind of the what sets that up, right? Like what sets up the story of Nehemiah going back and building this wall. Well, Nehemiah, while him and his people were in captivity, he was a cupbearer to the king. Um, Basically, a cupbearer's job was very simple. It was to stand in the way if anyone tried to poison the king's drinks. The cupbearer would have to try a sip of the drink before he gave it to the king. To where, if this thing's poisoned, I'm going to go down before you do. And so, sort of a scary job. But if you like to gamble a little bit, it would be probably a pretty easy job. Because hey, if you come out alive each day, yeah, your job's pretty easy, right? You just sit there and sip on a drink before you give it to the king. And so, high stakes job for sure. But we see through this, man, Nehemiah was faithful, and God put him in that position that he might, develop favor with the king. So, anyways, we're going to look at this. So, chapter 1, verses 8 through 11, it says, "The Lord's promises give us success in his mission." The Lord's promises give us success in his mission. And this passage talks about this promise that God made initially with his servant Moses of, if you're unfaithful, I'm going to scatter you across the nations, right? But if you are faithful, if you return to me, then I will bless your work, essentially is what he's saying. And so you see this picture here of Nehemiah knowing, God, you've given me this desire to do this great thing. And I can rely on your promises to know that if I'm faithful, if I'm humble, if I return to you, right? If I'm doing these things in your name, that you're going to grant me the ability to do so, right? It's all according to God's promises. And we have those promises too, right? We have the promises that Jesus is never going to leave us or forsake us. And if because of that, man, we have everything we need. We have the promise of the Son of God, that he's going to go before us to where we can do whatever he calls us to. And then Nehemiah chapter 2, we see this encounter where Nehemiah appears very sad before the king, and the king says, what's wrong? And you see that Nehemiah has this desire to go back and to build the wall, right? Um, and the king gives him the favor to do that. And so we see the Lord's provision gives us success in his mission. I think about that, and what Nehemiah was trying to do may have not been in the best interest of the king. But God provided for that permission. He provided for that opportunity for Nehemiah to go. And I think we forget about that a lot, how God provides so much for us. He provides open doors in our life for us to be able to walk through to complete his work. And sometimes that's how he does provide for us, right? Like we may have to do a lot of work, but that work would all be in vain if we're not going and walking through the doors that God opens for us. And so Nehemiah, you see here in this passage that even though he was overwhelmed with emotion, right, he was able to curry favor with the king, that God was ultimately providing. And then finally, later in chapter 2, and this is going to be kind of a theme in the book of Nehemiah, there's going to be opposition to this building of the wall. Not everybody's going to like it. But without a wall, a city could not stand. And so if Jerusalem was going to be a good city again, the first thing they had to do was they had to build a wall. And so you see the Lord's power gives us success in his mission. And we always have to remember, as we're serving God, as we are doing things for him and in his name, it is by the power of God that we do that. It is by his power and for his glory. And so just bear that in mind as we're talking about that this week. And it's a good reminder for us that we have the Lord's promise, we have the Lord's provision, and we have the Lord's power to do whatever He's called us to. So I hope that's helpful for you this week. We'll see you guys this Sunday. Thanks, y'all.